Okay. The value of technology. But will it have will the camera come on like right now? The Topeka City Council meeting will come to order. Please rise as you are able and give your attention to Councilwoman Hiller for the invocation. Remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to introduce Reverend Ron Lassiter, Jr. He recently succeeded his father as pastor of Faith Temple Church. That is a multi-generational, vibrant congregation that's active in the Tennessee Town Neighborhood Association of Topeka, and that congregation is also host to an international school. The King's Court, both a full-size basketball court for grown-ups and people who want to be big, as well as a small court for little ones, and is host to the annual Neighborhood Night Out basketball tournament there.
Yeah.
Pastor.
Thank you, Ms. Hiller. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. If you would, with me, bow your heads. Our Father, God, we admonish you this evening for the City Council meeting, God. We pray for your sovereign grace, your mercy, Lord. We pray for the City Council as they make decisions, Lord. We pray for wisdom. We know the fear of God is the beginning to all wisdom, and we pray for your strength and your guidance, Lord. We pray for the decisions that need to be made from the audience, even from the City Council, for the community, God, that they have been elected by, but you have selected. Lord, we just pray, Lord, that you touch us tonight, Lord, that you draw our hearts closer to you, even in this meeting, Lord, that we can have long-lasting relationship with you that surpasses even these fleeting moments that we call night and day, God. We just pray that you bless us, God. We know your mercies are renewed every morning, and we pray, God, that you allow us to walk in those grace and mercies. We bless you, Lord, for thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. We pray this in your matchless Son's name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kids have a program. Just like
Tonight we're doing something a little bit different than a typical proclamation, but I think it's particularly fitting for this season. The council members are very familiar with this young man with me, Ted Mize. He comes to the council reasonably regularly to admonish council members on what we should be doing for the city, but also to describe some of his activity that he does within the city. And we had the opportunity to put together a video that will tell a little bit in his words what it's about.
Why do you like to do this? Why do you do this?
Why do I do it?
Yeah, why do you do
Because it needs to be done. I end up putting in 40 hours a week. And, I'm still a youngster. I'm only 85. But, we have an awful lot of retired people that, it seems like their life is over. And volunteerism, there's so much to do out there besides what I run on to.
Years.
And that's why I volunteer. I feel like I owe the city something as far as that's concerned. I grew up here, and I worked here, and I was a businessman here.
Good point.
Because, we all owe Topeka. And we are all responsible for Topeka. No, if you see something needs to be done, why don't you do it?
Right.
And that's, like I said, it's simply what my life has turned into.
What more can you say? So we have a proclamation that we're going to read that goes into a little bit more of the details. Whereas Ted Mize has volunteered for 15 years painting thousands of the 12,000 City of Topeka fire hydrants. And whereas Mr. Mize has been a contributing member of Topeka since his birth in the Jane C. Stormont Hospital in Potwin 85 years ago. And whereas Mr. Mize patrolled McVicker and First Street in a boat to protect homes after the 51 flood. And in '66 was armed and helped to protect downtown properties after the tornado. And whereas Mr. Mize served also our nation in the Korean and Gulf Wars, this sounds like a movie. Whereas Mr. Mize continues to volunteer more than 40 hours each week as an advocate for people living in long-term care, for the Hawley Museum of Military History, at his church, and in addition to the City of Topeka's fire hydrant painting program. And whereas Mr. Mize has led a life of service, going back to his community, even after the tragic loss of his beloved wife, Connie, in June 2009. And whereas Mr. Mize stands and serves as an example of what each of us can give back to our city. And whereas the City of Topeka is eternally grateful to Ted Mize for making our city a safer, more beautiful place to live, work, and play, and for showing us the difference one person can make. Now, therefore, I, Larry Walgass, Mayor, do hereby proclaim December 20, 2017 as Ted Mize Day. And to commemorate the occasion, we have a piece of crystal here that has the city seal, the date, the presentation, and recognizing you for all that you have done.
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
Thank you. And I'm going to have the council members come down and surround you here because I know you want to say a word, and then we can have a picture. So council members, let's come down and get around. We all know Ted well.
Tony's probably driving around parking spots.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
Excuse for another podcast.
Yeah.
Actually, this is what he says. We looked at finding an appropriate fire hydrant, but it was too challenging to do. So I know you want to have some words.
I want to thank the City Council for their recognition. I feel that I am just a small part of the citizens of Topeka that give of themselves to their community. There are so many examples of them caring, volunteering in all our hospitals and care centers, numerous jobs done in our libraries, ladies and gentlemen that serve the congregations of the numerous churches in our city, the students that just last week sewed mittens for the needy in our shelters. That's just to name a few examples of the service of the city that is done by volunteers. I hope to share this honor with all volunteers and more what I call the beautiful people of Topeka. And I would like to just remind the retired people, and a word from our doctors, that for our own health, we must stay active and involved in our community. And thank you all.
You're the prime example. Thank you very much on behalf of the city, what you do for us.
Thank you very, very much. And all of you, thanks.
You don't want to say something?
Okay. Photos are important, Ted.
Okay.
We have a record. Okay.
Councilman Clear, I can't see.
Okay,
There.
everybody moves around, I guess.
1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Thank you.
Unless that makes funny, thank you.
By the way, that's my great grandchild.
It's an appropriate way for the season, for the holidays. And Mr. Interim City Manager, we have a presentation.
Mr. Mayor, yes, thank you. Gosh, it's been 2 months ago now. A group from the city of Topeka went up and took a visit to the city of Des Moines, Iowa, as part of an inter-city visit sponsored by the Topeka Chamber. And for a while, we've had some requests to bring back some information from that trip. And so Curtis Sneeden has graciously agreed to make a presentation on that issue and to answer any questions that you might have.
Great, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Curtis Sneeden with the Greater Topeka Chamber of Commerce. As Doug noted, on October 12th, about 70 local business leaders, civic leaders, a number of our elected officials boarded buses to the capital city of Iowa for the Chamber's 3-day expedition. Our task force chose Des Moines, Iowa this year because a number of our members have spent time there doing business, and they knew that Des Moines has actually grown rather spectacularly in recent years, even since the last time our chamber took a trip there in 2008. And we wanted to go up there and figure out why, what they had done right. And we also felt that Des Moines, even though it's a larger city than Topeka, and they in some ways have progressed further than Topeka, they aren't so far advanced that there wasn't something we could learn from them. We could still aspire to some of the achievements that they have made. So off we went to Des Moines, and a number of you were there. You know that we saw programs on the Greater Des Moines Partnership, which is their grouping of organizations that all works together to grow their economy and make their future more prosperous. We spent some excellent time in a place called the Evelyn K. Davis Center for Working Families, where we learned a great deal about how Iowans are working to try to transition some of their more disadvantaged citizens into the workforce. We heard about their efforts to develop talent. We heard about their young professionals group, and we also heard a fairly inspiring presentation about what they're doing to simply be more proud of Des Moines. We saw the Iowa Event Center and the facilities that surround that, an enormous property they have up there. We spent some time at the Principal Ballpark. And we also spent some time in a fairly interesting neighborhood they have up there called East Village, which has grown in certain ways even faster than the rest of Des Moines for reasons I'm not sure the locals fully understand, but there is a great deal of residential and commercial construction going on over there, all sorts of interesting new outlets going in, and so we spent some time soaking that in and asking questions. Now, I am a little reluctant to sum that up for you because many of you were there, and I wouldn't want my perspectives to be superimposed over yours. But I do think, based on the conversations we've had since, that there were some themes that emerged. And one of them is this idea of partnership, this idea that the region as a whole seems to have really gotten their act together to be working together, all rowing in the same direction towards a common vision of what their prosperous future can be. Also, this method of working regionally seems to be a lesson that we can bring home. And then finally, the folks, especially younger folks up in Des Moines, seem to have just decided that they're going to be proud of their hometown. And they're going to crow about it on social media and every other opportunity they get. We heard a great deal about that. And I think most of us on the bus coming home were inspired because none of those things that I just mentioned are ideas that are out of our reach. They are all lessons we can bring home and start to grow here. And in fact, there are efforts underway to do that. Another aspect of this trip that I think was encouraging to the attendees was that it helped us realize we are doing a number of things really well already. We do have momentum going in this town, and we were able to see that. For example, their young professionals group has grown over the last year. They were proud to say that they'd grown by 10%. They have somewhere in the range of 600 young professionals. Well, Topeka's young professional group is now called Forge, and since it rebranded to that name Forge in October, it's already grown 22.5%. It's up over 1,200 members. So that's one example of something Topeka really seems to be sparking on. Another idea is that we spent a little bit of time touring West Des Moines, and we saw the enormous growth that's gone on out there, development out there, commercial, shopping centers, et cetera. And I don't know that I speak for anyone else, but I think my opinion isn't unique. We saw some nice development, but nothing that struck us as particularly innovative, nothing that was terribly inventive. Here in Topeka, you'll be hearing in a little bit about a project here in Topeka that I think is going to be both of those things. The Wheatfield Village is going to be a project that will be an amenity for this community and will truly be an innovative type of development. And so there again, we here in Topeka are starting to do things that perhaps someday folks from Des Moines will come down and want to check out. So I am pleased to deliver to you at long last our final report from the Expedition Des Moines 2016. Our hope is that as people talk about this trip, as people hear about this trip, and as people read about this trip, people, a lot like the gentleman we just heard about and are very humbled by, will see things that need to be done and just do them to grow our future. So thank you for your support of the expedition, and I'd be happy to hear your perspectives or answer any questions.
Other questions or comments? Councilwoman Schwartz.
Thank you, Your Honor. Curtis, I didn't get to go to this one nor the last one, but I heard from the last one that in Tulsa, that one of the things that there was a difference between Topeka and Tulsa was that we didn't have a lot of like individual or corporate sponsorship of things, and we have seen that happen now in Topeka with the Cyrus Hotel and Cody Foster and Jim Klossman with Midwest Health. What did you pick up from Des Moines that you saw was something that Topeka ought to be doing more of?
In regards to corporate...
Well, no, in regards to the entire trip. From what I heard from the Tulsa trip was that they had a lot of venues that were named after people. They had a lot of corporate sponsorship.
There were some really kind of jaw-dropping examples of individuals down there who...
Right.
Well, I think that we are, newly inspired to look for ways to work together. And it would seem that there's an opportunity there and on a couple of tiers. So the organization that I'm a part of, and the ones that you hear about when you come to the JADO meetings, go to Topeka, and also downtown Topeka, visit Topeka, et cetera. We already have a pretty good line of sight with one another. We work together pretty well with one another. But since this trip, we have been actually spending more time to try to figure out if there are ways that we can be even more effective in our concerted efforts to try to sell the city and grow the city. So that's an example. We are also reaching out to our counterparts in Lawrence and Topeka and also Emporia to explore ways to amplify our voice, initially from a legislative standpoint, so that we can start thinking in terms of ourselves as a region that might be able to accomplish more if we just think bigger about who we can be. So those are a couple of quick examples. And I will tell you that Heartland Visioning, you're all pretty well acquainted with Heartland Visioning, has already grabbed onto this concept of social, I think social ambassadors is the phraseology, and it basically has to do with arming people who are adept with these devices and giving them the talking points to tell the world about their hometown and why they're proud of it. They're already charging ahead on that.
Thank you.
And you said Topeka and Lawrence. You meant Lawrence and Manhattan. The cities that we're
Lawrence,
working
Topeka,
with.
Manhattan, and Emporia. We're trying to figure out how to make an anagram out of LTME, so if you come up with anything, let us know. Something clever.
Any other questions or comments? Councilwoman Schwartz.
Mayor, if it's not inappropriate, I would love to hear from the people. I wasn't able to go this year either, but those of our body that did go, to see if they had any particular takeaways in addition. if that's okay.
They have that opportunity. Councilman Jensen.
I think you're spot on with your report. One thing I was particularly excited about, in addition to being proud of being in Des Moines, they're just proud to be Midwesterners. I mean, they're almost insulted by the term flyover country. And I think that's really important as, our populations in the core of the country need to grow in order for us to continue to afford the amenities we all have. And having people want to move here is very important. You hear terms like the Silicon Prairie, the exciting things that are coming to the core of our country. And Midwest Pride is a big part of that. And I think they do a fantastic job, and I can't wait for that to grow here. But everybody's so excited to be in Des Moines and to be in the Midwest and in that area. And we have a lot of the beginning stuff for that here in Topeka. And I just want to see it grow more. That's a phenomenal thing.
Thank you.
Okay. No other comments? Thank you. Thank you very much for your
Thank you, Council.
presentation.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. We will proceed then with a roll call.
Mayor Wolgass.
Here.
Council members Hiller.
Here.
Clear.
Here.
Ortiz. Emerson.
Here.
De La Isla. Jensen.
Present.
Schwartz.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
And Harmon.
Deputy Mayor De La Isla could not be here because of a death of a close friend. We have no additions or deletions to the agenda. There will be one executive session, and then one other little minor situation, as we have been very excited about our new technology voting board that we have. Well, as all technology happens, sometimes there is a glitch, and it isn't working tonight. So we're going to have to vote the old way, even of holding up our right hand. We haven't heard if there's any Russians involved, but we're certainly taking all precautions to make sure that this remains just within Topeka. So with that, and I do apologize for my voice. I've had some little issues in the last couple of days. So we'll go with the consent agenda.
A is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Cheyenne Anderson to the Topeka Landmarks Commission for a term ending January 1, 2020. B is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Franklin Young to the Topeka Housing Authority Board of Commissioners to fill a term ending January 1, 2021. C are minutes of the regular meeting of December 13, 2016. There are two applications staff is recommending approval. The first is a dance hall license application for Lazy Toad located at 5331 Southwest 22nd Place, and then a cereal malt beverage for Country Inn and Suites located at 6020 Southwest 10th Street.
Okay, that is the consent agenda. Councilman Jensen moves approval. Councilman Cohen seconds. Any discussion? I'm sorry, yes. And you asked that, and I failed to remember. Councilwoman Hiller.
I would request respectfully that the minutes be removed from the consent agenda this evening.
All right, any person can do that, and so they are removed to be taken up as a separate item. So we're voting on the consent agenda with the board appointments and the applications. And we have a motion and second for that approval. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
So we have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved as read with the one withdrawal. And we will take that up at right now. Let's do that as with the minutes. Councilman Hiller.
My request, if I need to move to adopt the minutes first, please advise. What I want to do is remove just one phrase.
Yes, why don't you?
So first, I would move to approve the minutes of December 13.
Councilman Jensen seconds. Okay.
Then I would move to amend the minutes by deleting at the bottom of page 359, the phrase "based on any property with a roof and a driveway." That phrase, it could have been a little confusing to the minute taker. That is in the middle of the 3 points that I asked to have go on record for consideration next year regarding DTI's, the Business Improvement District's funding spread. And the example that I did want to mention was one of the 3 was to include all properties in the downtown area, similar to the manner in which the city includes all properties for stormwater fees. the phrase that I'm suggesting be removed is specific to that stormwater fee program, but would not apply to the BID.
Are you seconding? Okay, is there a second? Okay, Councilman Cohen seconds.
Thank you.
And then I was going to ask the city clerk to, if you comment on what you feel this has done, or, because you're responsible for
Sure.
minutes.
The amendment, I think, is fair. It just clarifies what her intent was on her comments. So I know that it specifically could be interpreted both ways, but
Okay, all right. Councilman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But what she took down, is that what you said, Karen?
I made reference to that.
But is that what you said? Because they take down what we said.
Well, they pull out from that. These are not verbatim minutes. They pull out what the communication was intended to be. And I made reference to that, but I think for purposes of reference in the minutes, it confused the minutes. Because I was not suggesting that they look in the future at assessing BID fees based on roofs and driveways. And I felt that it could be misinterpreted with the best of intentions. So,
I guess my concern is, when it comes to minutes, I always respect the clerk if they say the dog is brown, but we came back and said, well, that wasn't in my intention. I meant to say it was something else. To me, that's not an amendment. I think we could say that, but what we say is what they take down, so technically she's right, if that's what was said. But if we mean something else, I don't think that's an amendment. I think that we would like to make note of that, and I would go for that, but that's why I'm asking, is that what you said?
I said a lot more than is in the minutes, and she pulled out what she thought were the salient points. My point only is that, though I mentioned that, it was in reference to the stormwater, that's how the stormwater fees get assessed to everyone, but the point was assessing to everyone. And so I felt it was confusing. The clerk says it's fine to pull it out and it does not affect the rest of the minutes, so.
That's fine, I just won't support it, only because I like to
appreciate
support that. Not, I think we need to make our intentions clear if they're not, but I will not be supporting it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we are voting on the amendment to the minutes. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
we have 7 yes, Ms. Ortiz voting no.
7 having voted yes, the amendment is approved. And then we will vote on the minutes as amended. We have a motion already to do that. So all those in favor of the minutes as amended, raise your right hand. Opposed?
We have 7 yes, Ms. Ortiz voting no.
7 having voted yes, the minutes are approved as amended. I want to introduce the 2 people that were appointed. Their appointments were approved tonight. Cheyenne Anderson is going, if you would stand, please, going on the Landmarks Commission, and Franklin Young going, actually he's returning to the Topeka Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. Thank you very much. We'll proceed then with the action items. A
is a public hearing to consider the advisability of establishing a redevelopment district at the northwest and northeast corners of Southwest 29th Street and Fairlawn Road, and an ordinance introduced by interim city manager Doug Gerber establishing a redevelopment district for the Wheatfield TIF district pursuant to KSA 12-1770 at SEEK as amended.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have, associated with this item, we have 2 actions that will take place. First, there'll be a public hearing on this project, and then we will request that the governing body adopt an ordinance establishing a redevelopment district, but in this case, a TIF district. Just by way of background for the governing body, this project was discussed in early November. Then in mid-November, there was a public hearing date set for this evening by ordinance, by council action. Again, just by way of a reminder, this is really a 2-phase process, and right now we're running phase 1 of this process. and that is just, as I mentioned from the beginning of my remarks, a public hearing and then adoption of this ordinance, which establishes the boundaries of this redevelopment district. Those boundaries are incorporated by resolution. At this point, as we've noted many times, there's no financial commitment from the city. There's really no commitment period except for the establishment of this district. Really, our firm commitment comes in phase 2 of the project when we talk about a development agreement and the development plan itself, and they will be back in the very near future to present that to us. But right now, we're just focusing on this phase of the project. I guess the last thing I might say is that by statute, the USD and the county both have 30 days in which to kill this district. Inaction by them allows the district to move forward, but they can, by their action, kill the district. So again, just a reminder for this body what steps will take place next. I would point out, as usual, we have Mr. Klossman and his team here in the audience, and I know that they would love to come and make some comments to you, so that would end my remarks. I'd be glad to stand for questions.
Okay, are there questions for Mr. Gerber? Then let's have, I'm sorry, yes, Mr. Cohen.
I had somebody call today that was wondering why the properties on the east side of Fairlawn were included. Does anybody know why that was?
And that's something that probably we would have them discuss, make the presentation in there.
I think that that question has been asked before, Councilman Cohen, and I think it would be appropriate to have the developer speak to that at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we'll ask the developers.
Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, thank you for having us here tonight. Bob Johnson with Polsinelli Law Firm here again, representing my client, 29 Fairlawn LLC, Jim Klossman, principal, Jennifer Sork, counsel, are here on behalf of 29 Fairlawn LLC. Also, Matt Pennington and Ian Mussman of Drake Development, our development partner on this project, are here as well. I'll just address that specific question right off the bat. Our thought with regarding the inclusion of those 4 pad sites was the potential synergy that is there with the Wheatfield site. They're commercial pads, obviously, as the Wheatfield project will be a mixed-use commercial project. We're hoping that the project includes some ability to create smooth traffic flow between the west side of Fairlawn and the east side, potentially with a signal at 28th, but again, that's pursuant to and privy to design going forward, but that would be our hope, would be there would be some traffic flow between those 2 sides of the street. Also, just the fact that it presents an opportunity, I think, for the city to think forward as to the potential for that entire area. And whether that be the current owners of those sites that would potentially redevelop them, or whomever it might be at a time a plan was brought forward for those sites, we think that it would lead to a possibility for further improvements or redevelopment of those sites, possibly catalyzed by the improvements which we think will come first at the Wheatfield site. I want to note that there wouldn't be any additional taxes levied on those sites as a result of being included in the TIF district. I know you already know that, but I think it's important to point out in the public hearing. Also, I think we don't see any negative impact with including those properties, and only possibility. If there is an increment that is generated either from real property taxes or sales tax increase over the life of the TIF district that occurs as a result of increased tax revenue from those sites, it would be the city's choice as to what to do with that money. At the project plan stage, at the adoption of a project plan, you would have a decision whether and where and how and when to place that money and how to use it, and whether to use it for a TIF project or for some other use. So by including those properties in the TIF district today, you're not making any commitment to redevelop those properties. You're not making any onerous burden upon the owners of those properties. We thought in making the proposal for including those properties that it would possibly lead to future possibility for both the city and the private development community for that entire area. Okay. Want to quick update you on status of where we've been since our work session, and happy to report that there has been positive progress with ongoing discussions with tenants, additional LOIs that have been signed, tenants driving site plan design and further market demand there. So as we hoped, the catalyzation of the TIF process has pushed that forward, and we think it would continue to push it forward by establishing the TIF district tonight. Our goal still remains to come in front of you with a project plan first half of 17, hopefully first quarter of 17, if we are able to sign leases for all of the spaces that we intend that will go in at the Wheatfield site. And that is to point out, of course, that the Wheatfield site we propose to be the first project plan, that being about 90% of the overall district, we believe would be within that first project plan. Speak just for a second about the eligibility for establishment of the TIF district. I believe you've got the conservation analysis in your packets tonight, so I won't belabor going through that study page by page or point by point. Certainly available for any questions you might have as to it, but I don't want to waste your time. I think it checks every single box that the statute lays out for establishment of a TIF district based upon a conservation area. And the area as a whole satisfies all of those statutory requirements and allows establishment of a TIF district on that basis. Do want to reiterate Doug's point from a minute ago that establishing a TIF district tonight does not commit the city to any level of TIF financing for the project. That will come at the project plan stage, where we will make a request in connection with the project, and a level of financing that we will have to prove up very step by step and very substantively for you is necessary to move the project forward. And again, tonight just sets the parameters for the TIF district, allows additional certainty that the city is considering TIF financing for this project, and allows us to continue designing, leasing, and financing the project. So to close, I would like to, again, just make the request that you establish a TIF district tonight. We believe that if the TIF district is established, that'll lead to the next steps of the project plan and then development of the project, which will alleviate the conditions out at the site today that has led to it being designated as a conservation area, alleviate those conditions, and allow the area to be something that goes from one end of the opposite extreme to the other. And I believe the gentleman from the chamber pointed out, as we hope, a point of pride for the city overall. So thank you for bearing with me. I will stand for your questions. I would like Jim to come up here and say a word or two about his vision and concept for the site. So I'm sure you'd much rather hear from him than me. But if you do have any more questions.
Are there questions for Mr. Johnson? Seeing none.
Thank you.
We'll go to the next.
Jim Klossman, 4425 Southwest Stony Brook, Topeka. I think Bob said it very well. We're very excited about this project. Historically, Midwest Health has been Topeka business since 1977, coming up on 40 years. Historically, that was our first office space, was in that development at 29th and Fairlawn. It was kind of an eyesore back then. It's more of an eyesore now. So we do have some connection with that location, and really committed to making that a first-class area. It's a high-profile area for Topeka. Thousands of cars pass that intersection every day, and we're looking forward to really revitalizing that whole area. This is we feel, a public-private partnership that we want your help, as well as large investment on our side. And so, again, I would stand for any questions. We're very excited. We hope to bring that next part to you early next year, and then hope to be under construction next year as well.
Are there questions for Mr. Klossman? Councilman Hiller.
Thank you. Jim, I'm so excited about this project.
Thank you.
Two questions, though. One, when you visited with us before, and even privately, there were a lot of issues about the intersection and waiting for some word from KDOT about the intersection. Has anything advanced on that?
Sure. Let me bring you up to date a little bit on that. That's one of the things that's kind of made this go on longer than we'd expected to. There is some problems with the intersection there. There's no question about that. So we engaged Trans Systems, which is a large company to look at how traffic flows at a cost of around $130,000 on our dime to look at that whole intersection and see what's going on. They've made some recommendations. They've met already with the city and KDOT on a preliminary basis. They will be presenting their final proposal to KDOT within the next few weeks. Our hope is that they've come up with a solution that would enable us to have some entry from 29th Street into the Wheatfield project. We're not certain that that's what the case is right now, and it's a pretty complicated process, but we have received a lot of help from the city. We appreciate that, and from KDOT as well. I think they're on board with trying to help this whole area. It is a problem. We agree.
Okay, other questions?
I did have a second question. I'm the person who asked the question about the properties on the east side before, and I thought I had the answer.
Sure.
It sounds like, though, that when you gave us the map the first time, there was a line down Fairlawn, and when I asked the question, the description was that you wouldn't ask for any of the financing benefits other than in that area west of Fairlawn. Has that changed a little bit?
No, not at all. That's correct. I think all we're doing is putting the whole area in the TIF. We're not asking, in fact, when we come back with our proposal in the first quarter of next year, it will not include any part of the east side of that. All that does is enable, if, and it will, as Wheatfield develops a first-class development, we would hope that another developer, whether it's another developer or us or whoever, would be able to take that and change that as well, because that side of the street needs some improvement too, to be honest.
Thanks for clarifying that. I also wanted to remind everybody that Jim or Wheatfield's TIF or whatever your company is were generous enough to donate the land and really work with the city and county on getting the Shunga Trail in on the north side of that property. And if it's going to go in someday.
Yeah, I think so. They're working on it. So, right.
Thank you,
yeah,
Jim.
I agree.
Thank you.
Are there other questions?
Thanks
Seeing
again.
none,
Appreciate
thank
your
you.
help.
Thank you very much. No other presentations at this time. We will declare the public hearing open. This is a public hearing for anyone to speak on the issue of establishing a tax increment finance district at 29th and Fairlawn. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak? Seeing none, we declare the public hearing over. It is complete. Council, you have before you the ordinance to establish the redevelopment district. Councilman Cohen, in your district. Councilman Schwartz seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
We have 7 yes. Ms. Ortiz voting no. Yeah. We have 8 yes.
We have 8 voting yes. The ordinance is approved. Thank you. Go to item B, a resolution on transfer.
B is a resolution introduced by Interim City Manager Doug Gerber authorizing the use of excess funds for unreserved fund balances.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, we had a discussion about this item last time, and it starts off with a good news story, and that good news story is that good financial management has allowed us to have some excess funds in our general fund to the tune of $1.6 million. So as you know, at the last council meeting, we had a discussion about where the priorities for those excess funds would be. I believe we arrived on 5 places for those excess funds. Just to go through those very quickly, I'll save probably the one that will generate the most discussion for last, but the first is a transfer of $400,000 to the water replacement fund to do some water line work on 6th Street and also 10th Street near the Wanamaker corridor. A transfer of $700,000 to the newly established Fleet Reserve Fund to start a Fleet Reserve program for the city. A transfer of $100,000 to the TPAC/City Hall STEP project. As we talked about, steps on both the north and south side of this building need refurbished, and we have a project for it. It's just going to require a little more cash than we originally anticipated. At the last discussion, we had talked about potentially allocating $300,000 for work on redoing these chambers, and then another $100,000 for short-term cash infusion for the Topeka Performing Arts Center. We'd like to modify that recommendation just slightly tonight and combine those two numbers, combine that $300,000 and the $100,000 into $400,000 for TPAC with a short-term infusion of $100,000 to get TPAC through the next month and a half to 2 months, at which time we will work collectively with the mayor, the TPAC board, the Venue Works to come up with what we hope is a viable long-term solution for what needs to be an anchor for our downtown revitalization project. Then that extra money would be used as needed on an ongoing basis throughout the year, perhaps made in quarterly payments, provided we're making progress towards some stated goals that we can come up with collectively. So with that in mind, those are our recommendations, and we would stand for questions.
Does the full amount change?
Mr. Mayor, the full amount remains the same, remains 1.6. It just, we would ask for an amendment to the resolution, if the council is so inclined, to change that from 100,000 to 400,000 for the Topeka Performing Arts Center.
But you're not counting that 300 in our general 1.6?
Yes, we are counting that, Mr. Mayor.
All right, okay, all right. Gotcha. All right. I hope you all understand that, Councilman Hiller.
I did want to ask for a clarification. Is it really 100,000 immediate and 300,000 to be held in reserve pending an acceptable long-term plan? Is that what I heard?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman, that is staff's recommendation.
Yeah.
That, again, if we want to continue operations of TPAC, which I think we heard pretty resoundingly last week that we do, we need to have that short-term cash infusion. And then, so that's sort of step one of the plan. And step two is to begin to work towards a longer-term plan, but continue to make payments on an as-needed basis.
I just wondered, I wanted to make sure that was language for the amendment to the resolution that would make it clear.
Councilwoman, if that is the council's, the body's desire, I think it would be as simple as deleting lines 32 and 33 and changing line 36 from 100,000 to 400,000.
Okay. Councilwoman Claire.
What is the benefit of doing the 400,000 now instead of the 100,000 and then coming back with your plan to ask for the other 300,000? Does that make sense?
Mr. Mayor and Councilwoman Clear, I think the primary benefit is that it allows us to reserve that money right now, and we have the money in excess right now. So it allows us to reserve it, where in the future we would just have to, it would just roll back into the general fund balance if we didn't reserve it.
But I would say we wouldn't necessarily be expended, and it wouldn't be expended unless there is an agreement, an appropriate agreement that could come back to this council.
Mr. Mayor, thank you, and I apologize for not being clear about that. That 300,000 would be held in reserve, that it would be designated for that project, and then we would come to you for permission to spend that on an ongoing and as-needed basis.
We would sign off. Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you. I guess I'm confused because we went from 100, now we're up to 400. So, I mean, in just a week, we had such a big jump. How much money is in the 2017 budget for TPAC?
Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Ortiz, as was noted at the last meeting, they received their 2017 allotment from the city already in the middle of, or late fall of 2016, they received $94,000 from the city, and that accounted for their entire 2017 amount of cash from the city. Now, the city also pays utilities on an ongoing basis, but our cash amount is $94,000.
How can we give them 2017 money and 2017 is not even here?
Mr. Mayor and Councilwoman, that was an agreement that the TPAC Board and Venue Works reached with my predecessor.
Councilwoman Schwartz.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have TPAC that we need to support. It's in City Hall, and I'm vocally very in support of that. My concern is that we have Jayhawk Theater coming on board with, constructing the theater. We also have the Civic Theater, and we have Helen Hawker Theater. If we give more money to TPAC, is there any way we can stipulate that all the theaters have to work together, especially those with stages? I know, there's questions as to, well, Topeka Civic Theater out at the school is doing very well. But, I just wonder if we have ever asked, the city has asked them to work together, especially with Jayhawk getting city money, it comes from TGT money. I don't know how to stipulate that, but if we're going to pump in money, can we get them all working together on the same page?
Councilwoman Schwartz, certainly as we're providing a major funding source, I think we have the ability to attach some parameters to those funds. So if that's the body of the desire, desire of the body, that's something that we could certainly follow.
Yes, good point. Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. As a member of the Jayhawk Board, I know there have been a number of conversations between the Jayhawk and the Civic Theater already. The thing to remember that is crucially important here is you're looking at 3 different theaters that meet 3 different needs and have 3 different audiences. The Civic Theater is a dinner theater, so there's a particular type of show, a particular audience that goes to that sort of thing. The Jayhawk Theater will be a 900-seat odd mid-sized theater. So the events that will not be able to go to the Civic Theater, but yet could not afford to go to TPAC with its 2,700 odd seats, currently, those don't have a home in our community. We don't have the ability to host those events. That's what the Jayhawk Theater is for. And then our municipal concert hall, TPAC, essentially, is going to house a different type of event, different size. So it's important for them to work together, yes. However, the theaters are not interchangeable. You can't take an event that's destined for TPAC and squeeze it into the Jayhawk Theater. It simply won't fit. It's unrealistic to try. The other thing to remember is the Jayhawk Theater, as much as we all want it done right away, still needs to raise millions of dollars in order to get that done. And while we would all love for your contribution towards our project, I probably can't say that actually, it's coming as soon as possible. However, it does need to raise millions of dollars to get the project underway and off the ground. So it's still, I would say, several years away realistically, despite our best efforts to get it done right away. So there is a time barrier between having that other facility up and going in downtown.
Councilwoman Schwartz.
Just a quick response. There are definitely theater things that happen that can be done. For example, our granddaughter came to summer camp at TPAC, and it was a theater, and it was put on. It involved kids. I've also been out to the Civic Theater, and they have a kids theater program too. And so what I'm saying is I think all of our theaters need to start working together and try to build the audience, whether it's we went to Chicago and it was packed and it was an awesome event. But we've also I've had grandchildren in the Nutcracker Suite and all of that they do use a stage. So I really think that our issue is that we need to get all of our theaters working together. And if the city's going to keep handing out money, that we encourage that to happen.
Further discussion? Councilwoman Hiller?
Along those lines, I mean, and we're not going to decide it tonight, just to clarify, I don't think Councilwoman Shorts was suggesting that the theater substitute one another, but instead to collaborate. And I've actually hosted some meetings, it's been a little while now, amongst the different venues, Jayhawk coming along, TPAC facing financial difficulties a year ago, Breakthrough, or the break room, and so on. There are some ways that I would like to see having been considered when that second plan comes in, because we are looking long-term. You, Councilman Jensen, made some really good points last week about not just throwing money and having it gone. But there are in other cities venues of varying sizes like we have here collaborate on tickets, on marketing. One of the things that we know, and it's too bad Mr. Klossman's gone, but he's certainly a major player now in bringing some dining and entertainment, there's going to be a martini bar or a wine bar or whatever. Those are critical to a great theater downtown. And so those venues collaborating together to make sure they've got a plan to make sure that at least 3 restaurants or eating places are open before and after every event that we have is going to help keep people downtown, keep them selling tickets and thriving. Collaborative things like that. There are also collaborations in maintenance that theaters in communities do that we could consider. The Expo Center management is changing as well, so it's a good time to get everybody together. So if that's what you meant, I really support that because it can help us thrive pretty cost effectively. Thank you.
City Clerk, do we have a motion on this? We do not. Since we're into the discussion, would someone want to move, and then we will continue the discussion. Resolution on reserve transfers, Councilman Jensen moves, Councilwoman Schwartz seconds. All right. Discussion, Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. So I do believe that collaboration is a good thing, but at some level, these are all independent organizations, and I would hate to force them to work together in a way that isn't conducive. One option you're advocating for is, pooled scheduling. I think that's a fabulous idea. Everybody publish your schedule on your website and everyone can see it. And having somebody come around that can fix all the curtains at all the facilities is a great idea as well. Where I would sort of start running into an issue is can one promotion company do that for everyone? We've discussed it. Is it really possible? Can they do it? We'd have to look and see. So my concern is that these are all independent organizations, and while that's great, do you want to cram them all together under one roof or not? I think we should look at, well, so can somebody explain exactly what you're proposing then? Because we keep throwing out collaboration as a generic term without any sustenance. And so I don't really understand, outside of the obvious, what you're looking for then in terms of that.
Do we need an amendment? Or is this an agreed to amount?
I believe, again, if that's the desire of the council, we'd like to see those changes made to the resolution.
All right. Does someone, are you going to move this amendment?
I will try.
Okay, thank you.
I would
Councilwoman Hiller.
move that we, and I'm not looking at it, but that we substitute language for lines 32 and 33 that would say an amount not to exceed $300,000 reserved for further consideration for TPAC in 2017.
Is that appropriate?
Does that work?
That works.
Okay. Second. Councilman Jensen seconds. Okay, we now have that amendment. So we only speak to that amendment. Is there any other discussion on it? Councilman Schwartz.
My point is that we can put anything like that in a contract, which we have even with our TGT money, that there are certain things that we request that they do. And I think some kind of language can be drafted to, when we have the contract with the money that's given to them, that there is something that says that there is collaboration amongst other theaters in the city. Because we will have Helen Hawker, Civic Theater, Jayhawk Theater, and the Topeka Performing Arts Center. And those are all theatrical places. So I think we should somehow, our attorney, city attorney can come up with some language to encourage them to work together and maybe provide that in a report or whatever.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment increasing the amount? Councilman Hiller.
And my point on that was not necessarily to put it in the contract, but to make sure that we're going to talk about long-term plans, and the consideration of being able to save some money so that the overhead is not as great was where I was going, was just to consider between now and when we talk again. Thank you.
Councilman Jensen.
Thank you. And my point is, we can't give them things to do without telling them what we want them to do. I absolutely agree, encourage collaboration, but if you want them to report on what they've done, you need to give them parameters and milestones and expectations to achieve that. Otherwise, they can sit there and say, well, we called them and asked if they had an event on this night, and that was collaboration.
We're now going to vote on the amendment. All right, we have an amendment to increase
It's
that
the
amount.
Russians, they're taking over.
Yeah. Is there any discussion on that? If not, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
Okay, we have 7 yes,
Yes.
and Ms. Ortiz voting no.
Okay, 7 yes. The amendment is passed. We now have before us the resolution with that amended amount. We have a motion and a second to approve that amendment, or that motion. Is there any discussion on it? If not, all those in favor, raise your right hand.
Okay, we have 7. There we go. We have 7 yes, Ms. Ortiz voting no.
Okay, 7 having voted yes, the resolution on reserve transfers passes. We go to item C.
C is a resolution introduced by interim city manager Doug Gerber authorizing the use of excess funds from unreserved fund balances.
Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you again. This is a similar discussion from the previous one, except this is transfer of under our new reserve policy, which the council adopted several weeks ago. This is transfer from, this is an excess money. This is just transfer from one fund to another. But under your new reserve policy, this requires governing body approval. Those 3 transfers are noted in your cover sheet. Briefly, it's $300,000 from the fleet fund to the fleet reserve fund, $360,000 from the unemployment fund to the risk reserve fund, and $240,000 from the debt service fund to the zoo fire hydrant project. We would request approval.
Any questions for Mr. Gerber? Your pleasure. Councilman Ortiz moves to approve. Councilman Emerson seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the resolution is approved. Go to item D, revised project budget.
D is a revised project budget in the amount of $600,000 and a resolution introduced by interim city manager Doug Gerber, amending and authorizing the project budget approved by resolution number 8755 for improvement project number T131042, which provides for the steps for Topeka Performing Arts Center and City Hall project.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. The next several items on your consideration for action relate to the action you've just taken in the previous 2 resolutions. I'll cover them collectively. The first, well, actually I'll wait. The first one for your consideration right now is increasing the project budget for the TPAC/City Hall steps from $473,800 to $600,000. As noted in our last discussion, we'll do plan on applying for historic tax credits for this project.
Is there any questions for Mr. Gerber? Seeing none, your pleasure. Mr. Emerson moves to approve. Mr. Jensen seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, resolution is approved. Item E.
E is a revised project budget in the amount of $2,400,000 and a resolution introduced by interim city manager Doug Gerber, amending and authorizing the project budget approved by resolution number 8625 for improvement project number 81078, which provides for the 2015 water main replacement program and providing notice of intention regarding the issuance of revenue bonds pursuant to KSA 10-1201 at SEEK.
Mr. Ingram, City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. As discussed a couple times, both last week and this week, this action will revise a water replacement budget from $2 million to $2.4 million, which will allow us to do work on 6th Street near Security Benefit, and also, hopefully, if the bids come in like we'd like them to, also work on 10th Street west of Wanamaker towards Henderson Street Avenue. I'm not sure which.
Whatever.
Stand
Is
for
there
questions.
Is there questions on the issue?
Okay.
If not,
What was the name of that?
Henderson with an H. What is your pleasure? Ms. Schwartz moves to approve. Mr. Henderson moves, Mr. Emerson moves seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the revised project budget and resolution is approved. Item F.
F is a revised project budget in the amount of $499,077 and a resolution introduced by Interim City Manager Doug Gerber, amending and authorizing the project budget approved by resolution number 8755 for improvement project number T301050, which provides for the zoo fire hydrants project.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, as noted, this is a project amendment budget. It will allow us to move forward with another portion of our zoo master plan. As we were working on this, it was discovered that there's a serious lack of fire hydrants, not only within the park, but specifically at the zoo. This will allow us to rectify that problem and, again, move forward with the zoo master plan. Nikki Lee gave you some details last week. I would note that Brendan Wiley is also in the audience if you have specific questions about the project.
Are there questions on this issue? Discuss your pleasure. Councilman Cohen moves, Councilwoman Schwartz seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the revised project budget is approved. Item G.
G is an ordinance introduced by Interim City Manager Doug Gerber granting a non-exclusive franchise agreement to Mobility LLC to construct, operate, and maintain wireless telecommunications facilities within the public right-of-way.
Mr. Interim City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, as noted, this is an ordinance which will grant a franchise agreement similar to the ones we have with other utilities to a company called Mobility LLC. Cities in the state have the ability to grant franchises to those folks that want to operate within our public right-of-way. We have the ability to a certain extent to regulate those franchises. And what this does is outlines those parameters under which Mobility will operate within the city of Topeka. Mary Feeney Deputy City Attorney Mary Feeney did send you a memo on this subject in which she addressed a number of questions for you. So she could be here to talk to any questions you might have, or I would also stand for questions.
Are there questions on this ordinance? Councilman Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I noticed this was a 10-year standard, or why did we go with 10 years?
I'm going to ask Mary Feeney to come up and address that.
Mary, why are we locking ourselves in at 10 years?
The franchise ordinance allows us to give up to 20 years, but based upon the franchise agreements that other cities have entered into with Mobility, it's been just 10 years. So I guess I want the freedom to renegotiate after 10 years as opposed to 20 years.
Well, I was thinking 5. I mean, I was thinking lower than 10, but 10's about standard then?
That is, among the other cities in Kansas that have these agreements, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, other questions? Seeing none, your pleasure. Councilman Jensen moves to approve. Councilman Emerson seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Ms. Heller? Okay, unless you're going to be
We have 8
opposed?
yes.
Okay. 8 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved. Item H.
H is a resolution introduced by Deputy Mayor Michelle De La Isla canceling council meetings for calendar year 2017.
In the absence of the deputy mayor, city attorney, would you want to just briefly introduce this?
Yes, this is an ordinance that would provide notice that the council meetings be canceled on the dates of July 4th, 2017, which is Independence Day, obviously, August 1st, 2017, which is primary election day, and November 7th, 2017, which is general election day.
Any questions? A procedural issue we do each year. Your pleasure. Councilman Cohen moves. Councilman Jensen seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, resolution is approved. Item I.
I is approval of revisions to City Council rules and procedures.
Councilwoman Hiller, this is from the committee that you chair, that also council members Harmon and Emerson are on, making recommendations on revisions to the city council rules and procedures we dealt with last week, and a couple of issues came back from there that we're going to look at again tonight, right?
Perhaps, yes. We did present them and discuss them last week. There were a couple of items that came up, but the way we left it was I invited anybody who wanted to pursue it further to get hold of me or anybody on the committee or the city attorney, and I'm not aware that that's happened. So if somebody does have something they want to bring forward, they certainly could. There was enough conversation about kind of through and outside that particular session regarding the supervision and attention to the council assistant, that once the rules as a package are proposed, I would propose a very simple single amendment to put some language back in to allow the deputy mayor or the deputy mayor's designee serve as a point person for the relationship with the council assistant.
I suggest, why don't you move approval?
I will do that.
And then we can go with amendments.
Move approval of the revised governing body rules.
Councilwoman Schwartz seconds. All right. Now, you want to go? You're going to propose an amendment.
Pardon me?
You're going to propose an amendment.
Okay. If you want to start right with that, it would be on lines in section 2.8, on lines in the section, it would be an addition at line 198. That section says now, notwithstanding TMCA 254, which gives the city manager the power to appoint, discipline, and remove any employee in accordance with city personnel policies, the mayor and council members may provide input to the city manager regarding the employment and evaluation of the assistant to the mayor and the assistant to the council, respectively. The proposed addition would be a simple sentence that would say, the deputy mayor or his or her designee shall serve as a point of contact for the assistant to the council for the purposes of the above matters. Period.
Was this discussed in the committee?
We discussed, as it moved through the committee, at one point it said, instead of council members in the text that's proposed, it said deputy mayor. And then we realized that, it might be that any particular council member would want to give some input to the city manager or work with the council assistant, and that we should not limit it to the deputy mayor. And so we changed it at that point from limiting it to the deputy mayor to saying council members. We've been working on some issues regarding the management of the council office, and it seemed from some input and conversation that had kind of moved around that having at least having a point person, not necessarily the deputy mayor, but since the deputy mayor appoints the council appointees anyway for committees, that allowing the deputy mayor to serve personally or to appoint someone else would serve that purpose.
Is there a second? Councilman Schwartz seconds. I think you get a point first, and then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Why do I need to provide input to the assistant to the mayor? I don't understand where that came from, Karen. The assistant to the mayor does nothing for me, but maybe
No,
take a
it has
phone call.
nothing to do with the assistant to the mayor, the council members. It says respectively. Were you thinking that the term above matters?
I'm looking at 2.8A.
Correct.
Do I have the wrong thing?
You have the right thing.
The officers and employees, the assistant to the mayor, and number 2, the assistant to the council.
Respectively was added so that it was clear it was the mayor and the mayor's assistant and the council members and the council assistant. So that's in the language that's already.
I mean, I think I have, if there's a problem that I have with the assistant to the mayor, I would go to the mayor.
Correct.
But I don't understand why we need to put this in here then.
Has to do with, really had to do with supervision and whether they reported to the council and the mayor rather than only to the city manager. It was to affirmatively put that role in, one that's been pretty important to you.
Well, so you're saying what this does, because that's not how I'm reading it, and correct me if I'm wrong, legal. Added language stating that the mayor and council members may provide input to the city manager regarding 2 specific positions. I feel like we can do that anyway. And one position is assistant to the mayor, and the second position is assistant to the council. I'm confused.
This was intended in the past for the council. Forget the mayor for the moment, but for the council.
But that's what this says, though, the mayor.
But it says respectively. It was to be efficient and include the fact that the mayor's assistant reports to the mayor and the council assistant, who right now reports to the council in the job description, that there had been some push-pull about those lines of authority and accountability and making sure that that person, that the council's assistant got taken care of. So the language was in there regarding the opportunity for council members to give input, but creating a point person on the council to make sure that the council themselves, as well as the council assistant, at least had a named point person on the council for questions, issues, making sure that the review got done on time, those kinds of things, follow up and support and so on, that those did happen.
And that would be the deputy mayor, is what you're saying?
It would be someone from the council. That line would make sure that there was someone from the council named. The deputy mayor names the committees anyway, so if the deputy mayor, similar to the Health Advisory Committee, that language says it would be the deputy mayor or the deputy mayor's designee. I think the deputy mayor has always designated somebody else in custom. So it's a matter of getting the language in there so that we had something.
Well, I would agree we need something so that it's fair to the assistant, to the council, and it's fair to council members.
Right.
I learned the other day that Angela's taking the whole month of January off. When are we going to know about this? I mean, nothing against her, but I think that's very crucial to all of us that we know that. And I think that's where that communication breakdown is breaking down, because who does she report to? And I think it's very crucial that we know if she's going to be out a whole month, so we know what to do and how to do it, or how to use it. But that was my concern. I would agree with that, but the other one, I'm just kind of shaky if legal wants to weigh in on that.
I was going to suggest perhaps Mayor and Councilmember Ortiz, after the word respectively, just put a comma and then put, and the deputy mayor or his or her designee shall serve as the point of contact for the assistant to the council for purposes of matters associated with employment and evaluation or the formal evaluation process or something like that. I think maybe where the confusion lay was with the fact that assistant to the council wasn't referenced again. So we thought we were pulling in the assistant to the mayor as well.
But I did include it.
She did include it, yeah, she did. And if we're going to put...
So this would allow the deputy mayor or his or her designee to be the point of contact on matters that relate to employment and evaluation. So if that's something that the council is amenable to,
and I would like to
this
see
language would accomplish that.
In parentheses, put an S in case we get more than one assistant.
Okay.
So we won't have to go back and change it. But
if I may, Mayor, it was for exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about. So the council knew who to, had a point person, and the assistant had somebody as a point person as well, instead of kind of nobody, 9 council members, which all makes sense in many ways in terms of input, but not without some sort of point person.
And if I may, Mayor. And I think that is kind of hard because there's 9 of us and we all shouldn't be going to her, you know, you need to do this, you need to do that. I think we need one person that can tactfully sit down with her out of fairness to her that can report back to us or just, you know, I agree with that, but I don't want to deal with Margot. That's what it's all about. I'll let the mayor.
Councilwoman Claire.
I think that answered my question, but this doesn't stop us from, say, the assistant has a problem with the deputy mayor and wants to talk to, I mean, it doesn't stop her from talking to.
No, it would not. It's covered.
It's just this person is responsible for really the evaluation.
It would be the evaluation, but there are things throughout the year. The example that Councilwoman Ortiz gave of checking signals and letting everybody know that she's going to be out on medical for a month. You know, if there's no point person, who do you tell? Nobody? Or just pick out you because you happen to walk in the office that day? It provides some structure that should make it easier, but it would not limit anybody from interacting.
So she'll be required now to tell this point person when she's going to be gone, and then that point person's going to tell us? Why not just have her tell all of us?
I think that she should. The issue is that, you know, it's still going to depend on who the person is. They're going to need to affirmatively take responsibility. And by allowing it to be the deputy mayor or the deputy mayor's designee, that person doesn't have to do it just because they're the deputy mayor. And it could be somebody who really affirmatively wants to take that role on for the benefit of the council as well as the assistant in that structure.
Is there any other discussion before we go back? Councilwoman Ortiz.
You know, Jenny would go to the deputy mayor, and I know this is kind of what we did off the record, and say, can I have this day off? You know, and then Jenny would, you know, when I was deputy mayor, I'd tell Jenny, yes, but as soon as you know that you need a day off, tell the council members so we know not to send you anything on Friday. But then not only that, who's going to cover the council office? You know, if Angela's going to be gone 30 days, who's going to cover the council office? What if some of us that don't communicate that and then all of a sudden it pops up? The show still goes on. We have to reflect that. And out of fairness to Angela, if she doesn't know who she's to ask for that day off or whatever, Jenny was always good about that. You know, I don't care if it was a doctor's appointment or whatever, to make sure that nobody had any big projects or whatever. And it's just something that we need to tighten up and get back to doing, so we all know, because I hold my jobs a lot till Friday, because Friday slows down for me. But if they're not going to be there, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we have an amendment before us to the rules pertaining to this officers and employees.
Yeah.
Would you clerk or city attorney, would you want to restate?
If people.
Well, I think one of you should, if you have it, so we have it down.
Right.
And actually, Mayor, I was going to clarify just the very end of this, too. So it would be to line 197. There would be a comma after respectively, and just carry on with that sentence and say, and the deputy mayor or his or her designee shall serve as the point of contact for the assistant to the council for purposes of, and that's the last part I wasn't sure of. I had of matters specifically associated with employment and evaluation, but I think Councilmember Hiller had something broader.
What I had was the above matters, which would then refer back to employment and evaluation that was immediately preceding it.
So for purposes of the above matters.
Correct. And as in terms of what I would call a friendly amendment, I am fine with putting parentheses S after assistant. So if there were in the future more than one, it was already covered.
You second, that's okay as a second. All right. Okay, are you aware, clear on the amendment? Okay, this is, we have one amendment, so there could be others, but,
Yeah.
okay. All those in favor of this amendment, raise your right hand. Opposed?
We have 8 yes.
8 having yes, the amendment is approved. You have a second amendment?
I do not.
Okay.
So if anybody else has something.
Councilwoman Claire?
Well, reading the thread, I thought that was the proposed amendment to the 2 years that you agreed to, Councilman Hiller. I thought that was the amendment from the emails for the 2-year committee.
Okay, this goes, how long a person is appointed to a committee.
Correct.
And what's that section?
Mayor and Councilmember Clear, I just provided those as potential amendments, should you choose to make those amendments at this meeting.
Okay, well, I choose to make those amendments.
Okay, it would be to, one was with regard to the potential of staggering terms, and that would be to section 8.2B. And one would be to the terms. Those are the two things that I heard from the last meeting. The other would be to section 8.2C, and that would be at lines 540 through 545. And you could go the option either 2-year terms for everyone or specify a 2-year term just for the ECD committee.
So really, you would either do one or the other?
Yes,
or you could do both?
We could stay with 1 year, go with 2 years for all committees, or switch to 2 years with a specific committee such as ECD.
Okay, Councilwoman Claire?
Well, this first, that you said, council members who are appointed to any standing committee referenced in subsection A above shall serve on their assigned committees for a 2-year term. Council members who wish to change committee assignments may do so with permission from the deputy mayor. Each standing committee shall elect chair from among its members. That's
your amendment?
That's my amendment.
Okay. Are you, okay.
But then there's also a B.
I know.
You want both of them? Just, okay.
Should we do amendment for each?
Separate.
Yeah, okay, we'll do them separately. Is there a second to her amendment?
She's doing C.
Councilman Jensen seconds. Councilman Jensen second her proposed amendment. Okay, so now we're discussing that particular amendment.
So I just want to clarify, so this would be 2 years for all committees, correct? Excellent.
Councilman Emerson.
Lisa, I wasn't certain what you're referring to. You're talking to Mrs. Clear. It's really on.
Yeah.
But am I to understand that some of the language of this in the red has been changed from what it was last week? Is that correct?
No, the tracking version that you have right now, Councilmember Emerson, this change would be made to that tracking version, which would be page 14 of the document you have.
And what lines? What are the
In
lines?
line 543. Right now, it designates 1 year for the term. This amendment would change the 1 year to the 2 years in line
I'm sorry,
543.
I thought I heard you already put that in there in case we wanted to adopt it. Okay.
Is there any other discussion on the amendment? Councilwoman Schwartz.
Just a quick question. This does not mean that we have a deputy mayor for 2-year term. This is just that one deputy mayor picks the committee, and then that committee member is on that committee for 2 years.
Correct.
So do we know when that begins?
At the appointment time, and then it would go through 2 deputy mayors then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Councilman Hiller.
First, I want to apologize. I did not, I saw a draft of some potential amendments that staff had done, but I thought they went only to Councilman Jensen and me, and so I didn't know they'd gone out to everybody.
They didn't.
Oh, okay. I apologize. As far as the 2-year term for committees, I will vote against it, and I'll tell you why. I've been deputy mayor before, and there are as many committees that the mayor appoints council members to as there are standing committees. There are more. And further, we all get elected to JADO terms, as well as MTPO terms. And those are, the JADO terms are one-year terms, the MTPO are two-year terms that are not tied to our terms, they're tied to the MTPO cycle. Also, if somebody gets elected deputy mayor, they might have been on 3 committees last year and not want to be on 3 committees this year because they're going to do their deputy mayor. They're going to personally agree to do the deputy mayor things. And you also, as a routine, and I know there's an alternate to C that maybe is because of my input to the city attorney, the ECD committee and the TGT committee both are grant-making committees. But the TGT used to be a year-round grant-making committee and isn't anymore. So it's going to meet occasionally when something comes up. The Policy and Finance and the Public Health and Safety Committee each meet generally on closed-end, one-off deals. They might be a really big issue, but it gets assigned during the course of that calendar year and gets worked and gets reported out, and it's over. The ECD committee is the only one that's now got a year after year grant-making responsibility, and even so, that one, the committee's been working for about 4 years to develop a new process because the council wanted to bring it in-house, and that has taken a lot of work, and it really has needed the year-to-year continuum. That said, we've had that. The deputy mayors do a pretty good job, in my experience, of making sure that there's some carryover people as well as some new people. And I just think locking all of our standing committees into 2-year terms could be problematic when a deputy mayor wants to balance the assignments, or maybe somebody goes off the council midterm. It would also lock, and for instance, when Councilman Emerson, came in late in a term, it would have locked him in. Maybe his predecessor would have volunteered for certain committees and been assigned them because of some skills and expertise that person brought to the table. When we get a replacement, they bring new expertise, but it might not match exactly. I just think that maybe with the ECD as an exception, letting the deputy mayor letting people volunteer and do the assignments annually is better.
Okay, other discussion, Councilman Clare, or you and Councilman Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do understand your points, and I agree with them for the most part. However, the way I read this is that where necessary, the deputy mayor could make assignment changes. And also, in a moment, I'm going to propose an amendment that would require the committees to have their assignments staggered. So to that degree, each deputy mayor would then have some authority, or some, I shouldn't say authority, responsibility to appoint new members each term. And yeah, I mean, the way I read it is they could balance across if they needed to. This just sets the expectation that the people that are going to be working with these committees will have some continuity year to year, as opposed to you could have a whole new slew of people you have to work with.
Councilman Clare.
So I've heard from staff and some other members and members of the council that the continuity of people for 2 years is needed in more than just one committee. I've heard it for the TGT committee also. The EDC, they may have been working on this for 4 years, but they are not done. And they're so scared of having to have someone come in and have to start all over. They want to get this done, kind of set in stone before new people come on. The committees, that's just a one-time deal that meets every now and then, it shouldn't be a problem then. If they're only going to meet every now and then, what's 2 years meeting twice? I mean, so I don't see how the 2 years would bother that if they only meet every now and then. The deputy mayor having to balance, I don't understand how that really would affect it either, because they can do that. They can still, with this in there, it has nothing to do with them balancing. And coming on midterm, I think that's just the luck of the draw. I mean, if someone leaves, like, gosh, I hope, I mean, you mentioned if somebody leaves during the term, I hope that doesn't happen very often, but if it does, I mean, you just kind of come in and you are replacing. So the deputy mayor's not going to say, oh, we got a new person, let me redo this. I think you just step into what was needed. But from talking to both staff, members of the council, members of the community on especially these two committees, they really want some continuity for 2 years.
Other discussion? We have amendment before us, changing that item to a 2-year term. And then another discussion. All. Yes, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sandra, I understand what you're trying to do there. I wonder if Mr. Jensen amendment, because you're really wanting staggered terms, aren't you? Because under 2 years, all the people could change in 2 years, and then you wouldn't get the continuity after 2 years. So you're really wanting continuity, correct, all the time? I mean, a certain person, not all 3 changed ever, is that correct?
Councilman Hiller.
Just throw in 2 examples. I will give Deputy Mayor De La Isla credit, maybe inappropriately, but anyway, for public health and safety, for policy and finance this year, we knew we were going to be working on the governing body rules. I thought it was really a good combination to have somebody who really had been working on that for a long time, a senior person who'd been around for a long time, and a brand new person on that committee to do that task that year. And I do think it worked well. And it didn't, I think that was specifically for that purpose, and it was good to be able to form up a committee for a purpose. ECD has had continuity. It's had a hard challenge, but the council, every year in the 5 years we've worked on it, there's been at least 2 people that had worked on it before on that committee. There's been a little leapfrogging because Councilman Jensen's been on it for 2 years, Councilwoman De La Isla and I were on it the year before that, then it was you and me, and then it was Councilwoman De La Isla and you. There were at least 2 people each year. You were the only new person this year. I think the deputy mayors have been doing their best to do that. The familiarity and continuity in the language that you want to propose is what they've been doing. If we think we should put that in writing, I could support that. I'm just afraid that locking the 2-year terms would be problematic.
Okay, I think we better, circle in to get to a vote here before too long. Councilman Jensen.
My only comment is that sets the expectation that it's a 2-year term, but we're still leaving, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Robertson, but we're still leaving it up to the deputy mayor to balance if necessary and move people around. We're not saying that that's impossible to do, but this creates the expectation and the goal that these are 2-year terms on these committees.
Councilman Schwartz.
One quick question. Was this 2-year term discussed in the committee, policy committee?
It was not.
So this is a major change we're making to the rules with the council to have 2-year committees. I would suggest that we have a substitute motion to refer it back to committee. Let the committee determine, we haven't really discussed this other than just right now, whether we think we ought to go to 2-year terms on the committees. I've been on the Policy and Finance Committee. I've been on the TGT Committee. I've been on the Health Advisory Committee for quite a few years. I've never been on EDC. I can see where there's merit to having 2-year terms, but I think we're getting confused here as to who's going to appoint committee members, how long they're going to serve. So I would substitute the motion to refer it back to committee where the 3 members can really talk about this with the legal staff and try to determine how this is going to work rather than having another motion come up to term it to, staggering terms. So I can see it both ways. I want to support it, but I'm not sure that we've really discussed it enough or that it's been through a committee process, and I believe in the committee process. So I'll make a substitute motion and we refer it back to committee. This one particular issue.
Only?
Yeah, not the rest of council rules.
Okay. Will you speak to that?
Councilmember Schwartz, would you want to limit it to discussion on 8.2C and then also the potential for the staggering, which would be 8.2B? So those two.
Those two issues.
Okay, so we have a motion to refer those two issues back to the committee for discussion. Is there a second? Mr. Cohen seconds. Councilwoman Clear?
So they discuss, and then it comes back to us and we discuss?
To change the rules.
I mean, is that right? The committee's going to discuss, they're going to come back, and then we discuss on what they discussed.
But typically, when something is sent to a committee, it's discussed there, and a recommendation comes to us, and typically it's adopted. But I think this was an issue that wasn't in the committee, but came up afterwards. Something like that is a way to describe it. Councilman Hiller.
Just as a comment of order, as long as our committee still exists until the new one is appointed, I do think if this passes that we could probably take the 2016 Policy and Finance Committee and meet on it on the subject within the first 2 weeks of January. At least I would hope so, because the deputy mayor, as I understand it, has to be elected on January 2nd, and that person's first and perhaps only duty will be to send out the volunteer listing for committee assignments. And in order for that person to make the assignments on time, we would need to, referring this to committee alone should work, but we would need to get that amendment back promptly so it could be voted on before the committee assignments were made. I think we can do it.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
No, are you?
All right, we have before us a motion to send these two items back to the committee. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor raise your right hand.
Showing 5 yes.
I abstain.
Okay.
Now, City Clerk, we can go back to, we have a motion before us to approve the rules and regulations. Can that be handled, or do we wait until we hear back on this particular issue?
Oh, so now it's been referred back to the committee. Only for those two, and now you can vote on the remainder of.
Okay, yeah, Councilman Ortiz.
The part that they talked about taking the chaplain out, is that still in or out, or where are we at with that?
That is a separate.
It's a separate matter.
That's a separate ordinance coming up later.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second before us to approve the revised City Council rules and procedures. And discussion? If not, all those in favor raise your right hand. Opposed? Motion carries.
I got 8 yes.
Sorry.
That's all right.
8 having voted yes, it is approved. We go to item J.
J is an ordinance introduced by interim city manager Doug Gerber concerning fees and procedures for record requests, amending City of Topeka Code Section 22090, 22110, and 22120, and specifically repealing said original sections.
And this goes back to Councilman Hiller because it was from a recommendation out of the committee, correct?
Correct. And we did discuss this as well last week. I would move approval.
Okay, it's been moved to approve the public record fee ordinance. Councilman Clare seconds. Any discussion? This is a home rule ordinance for which the mayor has no vote. All those in favor, raise your right hand.
We got 7 yes.
7 having voted yes, the ordinance is approved. Go to item K.
K K is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Karen Hiller rescinding obsolete resolutions concerning the legislative agenda process, Resolution Number 8044, and designating a chaplain for council members, Resolution Number 7458.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Again, this was discussed, presented and discussed somewhat last week. I would move for approval.
It's been moved to approve. Councilman Clear seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand.
We have 7 yes. Ms. Ortiz voting no.
7 having voted yes, the resolution is approved. We go to item L.
L is a resolution introduced by council members Karen Hillard, Richard Harmon, and Tony Emerson regarding council attendance at events and/or training and rescinding resolution number 6795.
This also came out of the committee. Councilwoman Hiller.
We discussed this as well briefly last week. The committee recommended approval on a motion of 3-0. I move to approve.
It's been moved to approve. Councilman Clear, seconds. Any discussion? Councilman Clear.
So you need to provide a written or verbal report to the governing body. Does this, there's no depending on if I go to a $20 seminar for 4 hours or a 2-week trip, I need to come back and do a written oral report?
The way this is written, yes. Now, there's no discussion in here about how long that report would be. It could be, I would imagine, we didn't talk about it at length, but it could be during the presentations. If it was something major, like if you'd use that money to go on the trip to Des Moines and had joined in a joint presentation. There have been times when a group of council people went and they did a post-trip meeting and came up with a joint report that was presented at the council meeting so that the information that they learned got shared with everyone else. But it's pretty simple.
I can be sure.
Yeah.
She's into teaching.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. So this says a council member's allocation may be reallocated by the council member to another council member. How did the committee envision this process working? Is it a formal process, or is it just a simple email to the city manager saying, I bestow this funding on Mr. Emerson, or something along those lines? How does this process work?
We spent a little bit of time, and legal can pitch in if they need to. I think it was Councilman Harmon who recommended we use the words allocated and reallocated for some clarity on the part of the council members. And so what it says is the council member's allocation may be reallocated by the council member to another council member.
Right.
So it's fairly informal. What it would mean functionally would mean that if you've got your share for the year, that if you're not sure whether you want to go someplace else, somebody else needs a little extra money, you can say yes or no.
Right, but how is that process carried out? How would I execute doing that?
That would be worked out, but that would be too specific to be in the resolution.
Okay.
So I'm sure that will get worked out, probably with the assistance of the council assistant.
Okay. Well, but see, I don't know that because we're not specifying how the process works.
And that's pretty down in the weeds for the resolution,
Okay.
but at least that gives us the framework to move forward.
Okay, all right. With that
Any other
confusion, I will support it.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed?
So we have, yes or no? You haven't raised your hand.
Yes.
What
ma'am.
should have voted?
We have
Or no?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Six voted.
yes.
6 voted yes.
Okay.
So the resolution passes.
Ortiz is voting with her eyes.
That completes the action items. Before we start the non-action items, I suggest we take about a 10-minute break to refresh.
motion off the podium up there? It's sitting up there.